it's pretty hard to blame them.
You mentioned one of the reasons for the strong U.S. support of Israel being the military base that they provide us in the Middle East. And it seems that the more support we give to Israel, the less secure the area really is, the less popular America seems to be in that region. And I don't know if there's a point at which our support of Israel will actually undermine our security. So my real question is, can you shed any more light on other reasons that America is so strongly allied with Israel?
Other places it says strongly allied with?
No, other reasons that U.S. is so strongly allied with Israel besides it being just the best place to park our tanks.
Other reasons why Israel is
so supportive? Oh, I see.
Right.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it causes plenty of anti-American feeling among the population. But nobody cares about that as long as they're under control. And that goes long before, way back, long before U.S. support for Israel. I mean, U.S. support for Israel, as I mentioned, it was always there, but it became really strong. The alliance was really established in 1967. Well, 10 years before that, in 1958, which happened to be a pretty turbulent period there, President Eisenhower inquired with his staff. This is in secret. It's been public for a long time. He asked, why is there such a campaign of hatred against us in the Arab world, among the people, not the governments. The governments mostly go along with us. But why is there such a campaign of hatred against us among the people? That's George Bush's "Why do they hate us?" And there was a response. There was an analysis, which has just been produced by the National Security Council, the highest planning council, which explained the reasons. It said there is a perception in the Arab world that the United States opposes democracy and development and supports tyrannies because the United States wants to get control of our energy sources. And it said, basically, the perception's correct, and that's what we ought to be doing. Okay, because, okay, so there's a campaign of hatred against us, but as long as we've got what we want, what do we care? I mean, back to the Mafia Don. I mean, maybe the people on the street hate him, as long as he can run his affairs. Who cares about the two-legged beasts? And that remains true. And Israel was not an issue at that time. But after 9/11, one newspaper, to its credit, the Wall Street Journal, did a study of opinions among Muslims. Not all Muslims, just the ones they cared about, what they called moneyed Muslims, like managers of, multinational corporations and lawyers and people like that. This is after Bush's "Why do they hate us?" speech. And they did an analysis of what the opinion was, and they found the same answers, not opposition to, globalization or capitalism, so-called capitalism, or U.S. power or anything. In fact, they're right in the middle of it. It said they found overwhelmingly pretty much what the NSC reported in 1958. They oppose U.S. support for brutal autocracies, its opposition to democracy and development, because of its interest to gain control of our resources. Now, by 2001, they added other reasons. One of them was U.S. involvement in the crushing of the Palestinians. And the second, another topic we're not allowed to talk about here, was the sanctions against Iraq, which were genocidal. I mean, Clinton probably killed more Iraqis than Saddam Hussein, and they protested against that. Well, it's kind of like off the agenda here, but...
No, she wanted to know what the reasons
the reasons?
U.S. support
Yeah,
Israel.
well, I mentioned some of the reasons, so I'll just go over it again. One is it's a major military base. Two is what I quoted from U.S. intelligence back in '58. It's a logical corollary of U.S. opposition to Arab nationalism to support Israel as the only reliable base in the region. Third is it's very closely integrated with U.S. high tech. It's a big part of the U.S. economy. We got to know that at MIT. When Microsoft and HP and those guys are in love with Israel, that has an effect on policy. And of course, they are in love with it, as you can just tell by investment patterns, for good reasons. You know, it's a nice relationship. Same in other respects. There's an ideological connection, especially among intellectuals, since 1967, since Israel's victory. There are other reasons that go sort of deep in the culture. What Israel's doing and has been doing resonates pretty well with our own history. I mean, the forcible and violent displacement of the two-legged beasts and settlement by a superior race, that's American history. Very explicit American history back to the 17th century, and very explicit. And the same is true of the providentialism. You look back over American history and American culture, a very strong theme, all right to the present, and including people who call themselves secular, is that everything that's happening is fulfilling God's will. God has a plan for the universe, and we're filling it. We're carrying out a mission by wiping out the indigenous population, by stealing their lands, by conquering half of Mexico, by invading Vietnam, whatever it may be. We're fulfilling the divine mission. It's providentialism, very strong theme in U.S. culture all the way back. And it's very similar in Israel. If you read, take, say, the book that I mentioned, the book on the settlements, which is a very valuable book. One of its main, a lot of it is concerned with the thinking of the major groups of the settlers, Gush Emunim, who are not marginal in Israel. In fact, they're highly honored as capturing the real essence of Israel and Zionism and what it is. And it's basically providentialist. By settling every inch of the land, we are carrying out God's will. We're bringing the Messiah. If you think Ahmadinejad is extreme, you ought to read American history and the ideology of the settlers. I don't know how to measure it, but I suspect that this resemblance between our own history, what we call our own history, and Israel's settlement, replacement of the two-legged beasts by a superior race, is probably significant. And incidentally, in the United States, it's not the right wing. You read this in Walt Whitman, for example, in Emerson, people like that. So there are plenty of reasons. I mean, they may not be good reasons, but they're certainly not insignificant. And when Israel goes against U.S. policy, the U.S. stops them, of course. The case I mentioned about attacking Iran is one, but there are many others.
Dr. Chomsky, I'm Jim Schneider. I sell the Herald and the Globe in front of a donut shop in Bunker Hill Mall in Charlestown. I was wondering if you had a chance to notice the October 6th article in the Oil and Gas Journal, which describes the delineation of some supergiant oil fields off the coast of Israel. Yeah. And they also say that it's an arc that goes from Syria, follows the coast of Israel, and then goes over to Egypt. And what's kind of embarrassing is to look at this full-colored chart on the first page, and there's a nice deposit of higher-quality condensates under Gaza. But there's no reference in the article that the Palestinian Authority is going to have any access to whatever monies are derived from what offshore territorial rights they would have. I guess evidently they don't have any, because if you can have the Israeli Navy off the coast, well, you probably can't have your own oil field business. But they found 15 billion barrels of oil and 100 trillion cubic feet of gas so far. But nobody seems to mention it. It's about rockets, and it's about who killed whose kids first. It's not about dirty old oil, especially if it's a hell of a lot of it.
Yeah, I'm kind of skeptical. I didn't read that article, but there has been reporting, and not reporting, but there are plenty of studies about that. And it's been known for a long time that there are gas and oil